January the 26th is Australia Day. It marks the landing of the first fleet in Sydney Cove, which began the process leading to the foundation of the Australian nation. Australia went on to become one of the wealthiest nations on the planet. It has a democratic political structure, the rule of law based on English common law, and a free market economy where anyone can start a business and with hard work, talent and good luck can become wealthy and successful. Australia is one of the world's most egalitarian societies, with most of us living in relative wealth. Real poverty is vanishingly rare, and our welfare system pays more than many people in other countries could ever earn. Celebrating these achievements would seem like a no-brainer, but of course there are always those who would disagree. Originally, a fringe movement began, complaining of Aboriginal dispossession of their land and rights. Some ill-informed commentators claimed, without any evidence, that genocide had been committed. These discontents want to call this day Invasion Day and use it for commiseration rather than celebration. This Anglophobic movement has grown and is now embraced by educators, bureaucrats and captains of industry, amongst others. Of course, when the nation was founded, there were clashes with Aboriginal people, and the continent is no longer entirely inhabited and controlled by a combination of Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders who arrived much later. Whether you call it an annexation or an invasion, there were downsides for the Aboriginals, but there were also upsides. Today in Australia, there are no restrictions to Aboriginal people wanting to access first world health, education, transportation, technology, communications, supermarkets, buildings and much more. None of these things were available on this continent prior to 1788 and showed little to no sign of appearing. Aboriginal people also have full participation in the political system, and the government of Western Australia, which is the size of Western Europe, is planning to give 8% of its landmass to some Aboriginal people and part Aboriginal people, without any apparent democratic process. Had the English not arrived, the continent would certainly not have remained independent. It would have been invaded or annexed by another more advanced nation like France, Russia, China or Japan. The results would almost certainly have been far worse for Atsi peoples. We at the BAC believe that a far more pressing question than was Australia invaded in 1788 is whether we are being invaded now.
As long as we possibly can, we ought to aim at having a homogeneous population. I don't want to see reproduced in Australia the kind of problem they have in South Africa, or in America, or increasingly in Great Britain. I think it's been a very good policy, and it's been of great value to us. And most of the criticism of it that I've ever heard doesn't come from these Oriental countries, it comes from wandering Australians.
For these views, of course, in the past, Sir Robert, you have been described as a racist.
Have I?
I have read this, yes.
Well, if I were not described as a racist, I'd be the only public man who hasn't been. That's one of these jargons, isn't it? One of these mod words. You call a man a racist.
Mass indiscriminate immigration is being constantly ramped up higher and higher. Populations with unknown loyalties are replacing traditional Anglo-Celtic Aussies. Whilst these migrants are mostly not culpable, they are replacing traditional Australians demographically, culturally, ethnically and politically. Our population is tiny by world standards, and we cannot survive mass immigration from gigantic populations who can simply replace us. And so rather than changing the name to Invasion Day, we should consider changing it to Stop the Invasion Day. If you want to do something positive to stop the invasion, then join the British Australian community now, because no one else is fighting for the traditional Anglo-Celtic Australian nation like we are.
This video has been proudly produced by the British Australian community.